All right, let's talk about one of the most basic, most fundamental ideas in all of economics. It's called the factors of production. And really, it's kind of like the secret recipe for how just about everything in the world around us gets made.
I mean, seriously, have you ever stopped to think about something as simple as a wooden chair? How does it actually come to be? It seems so basic, but when you really start to pull back the layers, there's a whole chain of events that had to happen perfectly. Where did the wood come from? Who had the skills to shape it? What tools did they use? And maybe most importantly, who had the idea in the first place and decided to make it happen?
Well, it turns out the process isn't random at all. It follows a very specific economic recipe. It's a formula that combines just a few key ingredients to turn raw stuff into the things we use every day, whether that's a chair, a smartphone, or even a streaming service.
And here they are. These are the 4 essential ingredients we're going to break down. You've got land, labor, capital, and that final, crucial piece of the puzzle, enterprise. Together, they're known as the factors of production. So let's dive into what each one of these really means.
First up, we've got the most foundational element of them all, land. But I gotta tell you, when an economist says land, they mean a whole lot more than just a patch of dirt.
So in economics, land is this big umbrella term for pretty much every natural resource you can think of. We're talking about the soil itself, the water in the rivers, the trees in the forest, the fish in the sea, and all the minerals buried deep in the earth. If it's a free gift of nature, it falls under this category.
Now, land has some really unique characteristics that set it apart. For one, like we said, it's a gift of nature. We don't manufacture it. That also means its supply is limited, right? We can't just make more of it. It's immovable. You can't pick up a field and move it to another country. And this is a big one. It's a passive factor. A forest can't decide to turn itself into lumber. It just sits there, waiting for something else to act on it.
So let's bring this back to our chair. In this case, the land part of the equation is super straightforward. It's the forest. That's the natural resource that provides the raw material, the timber, that we need to even get this whole process started.
Okay, so we've got our raw materials from the land. Now what? Well, we need someone to actually do something with them. That brings us to our second ingredient, labor.
Labor is the human element in this whole recipe. And the key thing to get here is that it includes all human effort, not just the sweaty, back-breaking stuff. It's the physical work, for sure, but it's also the mental effort, the creativity, the planning, and the skill, all done with the goal of earning some kind of reward or income.
And you can see the two sides of that coin perfectly here. You've got physical labor, think about a construction worker building a house, but then you've also got mental labor, like a bank manager analyzing spreadsheets or a software developer writing code. Both are absolutely essential, and both count as labor.
So, let's do a quick side-by-side of what we've covered so far. Remember how we said land is passive? It just sits there? Well, labor is the active factor that gets the ball rolling. Land is stuck in one place, but labor is mobile. People can move to where the jobs are. And while the supply of land is fixed, the supply of labor, the workforce, can definitely change over time.
So back in our chair factory, who is the labor? Well, it's the carpenter. It's the person applying their skill, their effort, both their physical and mental energy, to take that raw timber from the land factor and transform it into the actual pieces of a chair.
All right, our carpenter is ready to work. But they can't exactly shape a block of wood with their bare hands, right? They're going to need some tools. And that brings us to our third factor, capital.
Now, this is a really important distinction. In economics, when we say capital, we don't mean money. Money is just paper. It can't actually produce anything on its own. It's used to buy capital. Capital itself refers to the physical, man-made things that are used to produce other things. We're talking tools, machines, factories, computers, delivery trucks, you name it.
So, what makes capital special? Well, unlike land, it's man-made. We build it. It's also generally mobile, a lot like labor. And interestingly, like land, it's also considered a passive factor. A hammer doesn't just swing itself, right? It needs labor to put it to use. And of course, its supply can be changed. We can always build more factories or make more tools.
So for our chair-making business, the capital is pretty much everything the carpenter uses to do their job. It's the saw that cuts the wood, the hammer that joins the pieces, the workbench they use, and even the workshop building itself. All of that is capital.
Okay, check this out. We now have land, labor, and capital. We have wood, a carpenter, and a workshop full of tools. But those three things won't just magically combine themselves to make a chair. There's a missing spark. And that brings us to our final and maybe the most important factor of all, the entrepreneur.
The entrepreneur is the organizer, the visionary. They're the risk taker. This is the person who has the initial idea, who goes out and gathers all the other resources. They get the land, hire the labor, buy the capital, and puts it all into motion. They're making a bet that they can combine these ingredients to create something people actually want to buy.
So, what does an entrepreneur really do? Well, they're the ones making the big decisions. They have to coordinate all the other factors to make sure they're working together efficiently. Then there's the big one. They bear the risk. If the business fails, they're the one who loses money. And often, they're also the ones driving innovation, finding new, better, or cheaper ways of doing things.
And there it is, the final piece of our chair-making puzzle. The entrepreneur is the business owner, the person who saw a market for chairs, went out and bought the timber, hired our skilled carpenter, provided the workshop and all the tools, and then took on the risk of selling those finished chairs, hopefully for a profit.
So there you have it. Land, labor, capital, and enterprise. Those are our 4 ingredients. And when you put them all together in the right way, that's when you get production. Let's wrap this up by looking at the complete picture.
This is actually a really useful way to think about it. On the left, you've got the abstract economic factors, but on the right, you have the actual people or agents who provide them. Land is provided by a landlord who gets rent. Labor is provided by a laborer who earns wages. Capital is provided by a capitalist for interest. And enterprise is provided by the entrepreneur who is aiming for profit.
I really love this quote. It just perfectly sums up the dynamic role of the entrepreneur. The other factors are absolutely essential, but you can think of them as the ship itself, the cargo, and the crew. The entrepreneur? Well, they're the captain, steering the whole thing, navigating the risky waters, and setting the course for the entire journey.
And that brings us to the end. But I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. With powerful new technologies like artificial intelligence becoming more and more integrated into our economy, how do you think that's going to reshape these 4 fundamental factors? Could AI become a new form of capital, or maybe even a new kind of labor? It's a pretty fascinating question to think about for the future.